Nick, thanks for joining us. We are being told the court is likely to come back in the next 20 minutes for the sentencing remarks. The prosecution has asked or called for a whole life tariff, and she would be, the only, I think, fourth woman to receive such a sentence.
Yeah, there's three previous women, Rose West and two others, who have received this. So it's extremely rare. It relates to multiple murders, premeditated. Obviously here we're dealing with the most vulnerable of children, the most vulnerable people in our society, and a huge breach of trust. So all the aggravating features are there. She's over 21, and I think a whole life tariff is inevitable.
And just explain to us, Nick, what a whole life tariff means. Does that mean that she will never get out of prison? She will spend the rest of her life there?
It does, unless there are extraordinary, compassionate grounds for releasing her at some stage, at a well-advanced stage of a sentence. But in essence, it means she will never be released from prison. Normally you receive a life sentence, and when you receive a life sentence, there's sometimes a minimum sentence imposed. That means that is the time you do. A whole life tariff means what it says. It's the whole of your life behind bars.
Is it also significant that her defence team offered no mitigating circumstances in their comments this morning?
Whatever they said, I don't think will make the slightest difference to the sentence. I think the writing's on the wall. The judge really doesn't have a discretion in how to deal with this. There's only one sentence that she can receive, and that's a whole life tariff. And that there is really no useful mitigation that can be advanced. It would not achieve anything, and therefore it would simply be wasting the court's time.
Now, Lucy Letby is refusing to appear in the dock for her sentencing or to hear those impact statements from the babies' families. She has the power. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. She has the power to say that she does not want to appear in the dock.
It sounds ridiculous. It sounds perverse. It's a ridiculous anomaly in the law that I've been calling for it to be changed for some time now. And I think this case will prove to be the catalyst. The judge certainly has no power from a legislative perspective to do anything to force her attendance. She's in custody. Whether or not the prison authorities decide to use the expression lawful enforcement, and when the judge asks for her to attend, they might liberally interpret that as meaning we're going to enforce her lawfully to attend in compliance with the judge's request, which in essence will mean picking her up and putting her in the dock. I think the law will be changed inevitably now to force defendants. There's a Victims Act that's going through at the moment. It's due to go through for final stages in November, and I think legislation the relevant provisions will be rushed through in relation to this aspect of that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you're dealing with somebody, one of the worst offenders that you can imagine, someone who's going to receive a whole life tariff, what is the penalty that you're going to impose? And I think it's one of the unusual situations where you have to say she can be forced to attend, and she can be forced physically to attend, so that first of all, the complainants, the victims' parents can see her, they can see justice being done, and also the defendant, has the opportunity of hearing the victim's impact statements, which is critical for her and for the judicial system. Another approach, of course, would be to put cameras in her cell and make sure that she hears, she is aware of what's happening, she is aware of what's said. Obviously, that's something she can't do anything about. And that is what I would do as an expeditious step in relation to these proceedings, so that she can't circumnavigate the lacuna that currently exists. Because if the authorities don't listen, it's too much of a slap in the face, a final insult for the families. I would have cameras placed in a cell and make her listen. And that, of course, would be that's something that I think would satisfy the case as much as it can be satisfied at the moment.
Yeah, and Sir Robert Buckland, former minister, outlined that on GB News here on Friday. And there is precedent that evidence is given from cells, police cells or prison cells by video link for cases.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that might be what happens here. The government have been talking about trying to force her to attend. I don't know whether the government has spoken to the prison authorities, but in essence, I'm unaware of any legal power that can force her attendance. And of course, the problem is if they physically pick her up without that legal power, she may have an action for assault and other civil actions, which will be ludicrous, but they may actually exist in law because you can't just physically pick someone up without having the relevant authority, and we can't just make up that law. Yeah. So, you know, the law needs to be in place to protect people, to make sure that she is in the dock, she listens to what happens, not just in her case, but in other cases as well. And this isn't the first time we're confronted with this situation. And I have to say the government seemed to be particularly slow in reacting. It's a situation that should never be encountered, particularly because of the families that are concerned. They should be able to see. We say justice needs to be seen to be done. And at that crucial stage, they're being deprived. It's wrong.
Nick, thank you for those thoughts. Stay with us, of course, as the sentencing remarks expected in the next 20 minutes or so. Let's